In the heart of a charming town nestled among rolling hills and winding streams, I grew up in a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of city life. Our small, weathered house, with its creaking wooden floors and windows that framed expansive fields, was a universe unto itself. It was here, amid the simplicity and warmth of family love, that my story began. Though my parents were not affluent, they were rich in kindness and wisdom. My father, a local carpenter, had hands worn by years of hard work but gentle in their touch. He crafted not only furniture but also the values of hard work and humility within me. My mother, a school teacher, filled her home with books and stories that sparked my imagination and nurtured my dreams. Life in our small town was unhurried and unpretentious. Neighbors greeted each other with familiarity, and community events were the highlights of our social calendar. I cherished this life, finding joy in simple pleasures. The fresh scent of earth after rain, the rustling of leaves underfoot, and the chorus of birds at dawn. It was at the local library where I first met Mark. He was unlike anyone I had known, an urbane visitor from the city with a touch of sophistication yet an unassuming nature. His family was well known in the business circles, their wealth and influence extending far beyond the city's skyscrapers. But Mark, with his easy smile and genuine interest in my everyday stories, was a refreshing anomaly in that world. Our initial conversations were cautious, as if our worlds were orbiting each other hesitantly. He spoke of city life, the fast pace, the endless opportunities, and the dazzling lights, while I shared stories of my town, the annual harvest festival, serene walks by the stream, and the close-knit community. We often met at the old park bench by the lake, where our conversations would stretch for hours. The lake, with its placid waters reflecting the changing hues of the sky, witnessed our growing connection, an invisible thread weaving our disparate worlds into one. One evening, Mark's voice held a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "I've always been surrounded by people who care more about wealth and status," he said, "but with you, I've found a serenity I didn't know existed. You've shown me a different way of life, one that's genuine and full of warmth." His words stirred something deep within me. "Mark," I said, "where we come from doesn't define us. It's who we are when we're together that matters. You've brought a new perspective into my life, opening my eyes to dreams I never dared to have." As our relationship deepened, Mark confided about his family, particularly his mother, a woman of elegance with stringent expectations. He spoke of her with respect, yet there was concern in his words. "She has her own ideas about who I should be with. I'm just worried about how she'll react to us." I took his hand, feeling the slight tremor. "We'll face that together. Love isn't about backgrounds or expectations. It's about two people who choose each other against all odds." The day Mark proposed was as unassuming as our love, no grand gestures, just a heartfelt promise of a life together. As I looked into his eyes, brimming with hope and love, I knew our journey was just beginning. I knew that meeting Mark's family was just the beginning, but as we approached their grand mansion, my nerves were on edge. The opulence of the estate seemed to underscore the vast differences between our worlds. Mark squeezed my hand, giving me a reassuring smile. "Just be yourself, Anna. That's all you need to be." I managed a weak smile, trying to push down the anxiety rising within me. "I just hope your mom doesn't think I'm out of place." Mark sighed, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Mom can be a bit much. Just remember, I'm here with you." As we entered the lavish dining room, Mark's mother, Maren, greeted us with a regal air. Her gaze swiftly assessed me, a flicker of disapproval passing over her face. "So, this is the young lady who's captured my son's heart. Interesting choice." Dinner was an elaborate affair, the table set with dishes I couldn't even name. Maren, ever the gracious host, offered me a plate with a sly smile. "I suppose these dishes might be a bit too sophisticated for your taste, Anna. We can get something simpler if you prefer." Embarrassed, I managed a polite decline. "No, thank you. I'm always eager to try new things." As the evening progressed, Maren's comments became increasingly pointed. She scrutinized my dress, a simple, neat outfit I had thought appropriate for the occasion. "Is that what passes for evening wear in your town? It must be challenging to find good clothes on a modest budget." Mark jumped in, attempting to steer the conversation elsewhere, but his mother's relentless questioning continued. "Tell me, Anna, what do your parents do? It's always fascinating to learn about different walks of life." I felt the weight of her judgment as I answered. "My father is a carpenter, and my mother is a school teacher." "Oh, how quaint," she replied, her voice dripping with condescension. "Hard-working people, I'm sure, but I suppose they couldn't offer you much in the way of a financial head start." The meal continued with Marn taking jabs at my small-town upbringing, my parents' humble occupations, and even my salary, which she had somehow learned about. Each comment, veiled in politeness, was sharp enough to sting. Mark was visibly uncomfortable, and his attempts to defend me seemed only to amuse her further. As we left, Mark's father, Daniel, pulled me aside, offering a kind smile. "Anna, you handled yourself well. Don't let her get to you, she'll come around." In the car, Mark apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry, Anna. I didn't expect her to be so." "It's okay," I said, trying to reassure him. "I knew it wouldn't be easy." "I didn't think she'd be this harsh," I said, my voice a mix of hurt and determination. "It's okay, Mark. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I love you, and that's what matters." That night, as I lay in bed, the sting of his mother's words lingered, but beneath the hurt was a growing resolve. This was more than just fitting in. It was a test of our love and my strength, and I was ready to face it head on. As the wedding day approached, excitement filled the air, but so did increasing tension. Marin, who had taken it upon herself to oversee the preparations, seemed to find a peculiar pleasure in undermining my ideas and choices. One afternoon, while discussing the wedding plans with Mark and his mother, the topic of the wedding dress came up. I had chosen a simple yet elegant gown that I felt reflected my personality. Marin, however, had other ideas. "That dress, Anna, it's so plain," she said with a patronizing tone. "Don't you want to make a statement on your big day? After all, you're marrying into the family." Mark squeezed my hand under the table, offering a supportive look. "Mom, Anna looks beautiful in that dress. It's her choice, and it's perfect." But Marin was relentless. "Oh, Mark, let's be realistic. This is a high-profile event. People expect a certain standard. Anna, dear, you should consider something more fitting of our family's status." I tried to keep my voice steady despite the sting of her words. "I appreciate your concern, but I really love my dress. It's special to me." Her response was a dismissive wave. "Well, it's your day, I suppose. But remember, it's not just about you. It's about how you represent us too." As the days went by, her comments became more frequent and cutting. Marin criticized the flower arrangements, the menu choices, even the invitations. Each remark was a subtle dig at my background and my inability to meet her lofty standards. Mark and I had many conversations about this, often late into the night. "I can't believe she's being so difficult," Mark would say, frustration evident in his voice. "I wish she could see how amazing you are and how you make me happy." I would lie there, feeling his arms around me, a mix of love and sorrow in my heart. I knew it wouldn't be easy marrying into your family, but I didn't expect it to be this hard. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within me. Despite the constant criticisms from Marin, my parents and I had worked hard to make everything perfect. As I dressed in my simple but elegant gown, I was determined to let my love for Mark and the life we were building together shine through, no matter the challenges we face. I hoped the day would pass without incident. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with love and heartfelt vows. Mark's eyes shone with affection and promise as we exchanged our I do's. However, looming over this joyous occasion was the apprehension of the reception to follow, especially the speeches. As expected, Marin took the microphone, commanding the room's attention. The air was thick with expectation as she began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice ringing out clearly, "today we have gathered to witness the union of my son Mark with Anna, a person from a different circle." Whispers spread through the guests, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. Marin continued, her words sharp and unyielding. "While some may commend Mark for his charitable heart in lifting a beggar from the streets, we must be cautious. It's essential to maintain our family's reputation and standards, not let them be diluted by those who seek to elevate their status by clinging to a family of higher standing." The room fell into stunned silence. My parents looked at me, their faces a mix of shock and hurt. Mark's expression was one of disbelief and anger. The guests, an uneasy blend of our friends and Mark's high society acquaintances, watched on, unsure of how to react. My heart sank, and a profound shame washed over me. Her cruel words in such a public setting were more than insults. They were a deliberate attempt to shame and belittle me in front of everyone we cared about. As Marin concluded her speech with a forced toast to her future, the applause was hesitant and muted. The room was enveloped in an awkward silence, the joy of the occasion marred by her venomous words. Mark stood up, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, Anna. This isn't what I wanted." His eyes were apologetic, filled with a mix of love and sorrow. I looked around at the shocked faces of our guests, feeling incredibly humiliated. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, casting a shadow over what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. The atmosphere at the reception remained tense following Marin's disparaging speech. Then, Mark's grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor, a figure of respect and authority within the family, requested the microphone. Her poised demeanor and serious expression immediately drew the attention of all the guests. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and firm. "I have something important to say," Mrs. Eleanor began, her voice steady and resolute. "Anna, you have faced unwarranted criticism today, criticism no one deserves, especially not on their wedding day." I looked up in surprise, and Mark, standing beside me, appeared equally astonished. Mrs. Eleanor then turned her gaze toward Marin. "It seems we've forgotten our own history and where we come from. Let me remind everyone here, particularly you, that before you became the lady of this house, you were a maid working under this very roof. It was here that you met your husband." A hush fell over the room. Marin's face turned a shade paler, her eyes widening in shock and embarrassment. Mrs. Eleanor continued, her tone unwavering. "For someone who rose from poverty to stand here and scorn another for their humble beginnings is not only ironic but deeply hypocritical." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The room was enveloped in stunned silence, every guest hanging on Mrs. Eleanor's every word. "You who have experienced such hardship should be the last person to judge or belittle someone based on their background. We should celebrate Anna's integrity and strength, not deride her for it." Guests shifted uncomfortably, and whispers began to circulate. Marin sat motionless, her face reflecting the impact of Mrs. Eleanor's words. "In this family, we value character over wealth, kindness over status. Anna exemplifies these values, and I am proud to welcome her to our family." Mrs. Eleanor concluded, her gaze softening as she looked at me. The room erupted into applause, a stark contrast to the earlier muted response. Marin sat there, completely humbled, her earlier arrogance replaced by a visible sense of shame. "To be honest, I don't feel sorry for her," Mark whispered to me. "I never expected Grandma to stand up for us like this." I squeezed his hand, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. "She's amazing." The rest of the evening felt lighter, the air cleared by Mrs. Eleanor's candid defense. Guests approached with warm congratulations and sincere smiles, transforming the atmosphere into one of genuine celebration. I felt a wave of solidarity and relief as we left the reception hand in hand. Mrs. Eleanor's words had shifted the dynamics, dismantling the cruel and misguided plans of Mark's mother. The renewed sense of confidence and belonging was exhilarating. In the days following the wedding, an unspoken tension settled over Mark's family like a heavy fog. This tension reached its peak during a family meeting at Mrs. Eleanor's house, where the atmosphere was charged with expectation and unease. Gathered in the grand living room, Mrs. Eleanor began without preamble, her voice firm and resolute. "What happened at the wedding cannot be ignored. The way you spoke to Anna was disgraceful." She addressed Marin directly, her eyes sharp and unyielding. Marin, usually so composed, seemed smaller and less assured. "Eleanor, I've already apologized to Anna," she said, her voice tinged with defiance. "It's not just about an apology," Mrs. Eleanor retorted. "Your actions reflect on this entire family. You've become accustomed to a lifestyle funded by the family's money without truly valuing it." Mark's father, Daniel, nodded in agreement, his expression serious. "Mother is right. You've lost sight of what really matters." Mrs. Eleanor then made her decision clear, each word deliberate and precise. "I've decided to cut off the financial support you've been receiving. It's time you start contributing to the family instead of just taking. You'll need to find a job and learn to live within your means." The shock on Marin's face was palpable. She turned to her husband for support. "You can't agree with this. She can't just cut me off like this." But Daniel surprised her. "I stand with my mother on this. You've gone too far this time. It's for your own good." Marin's anger and disbelief were evident, her usual composure crumbling under the weight of her new reality. Mark, who had been silent up to this point, finally spoke. His voice was steady. Mom, Grandma's decision is harsh but fair. You need to understand the impact of your words and actions. I watched the scene unfold, feeling a mix of sympathy and relief. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. The meeting ended with Maran in a state of shock, the reality of her situation slowly sinking in. It was clear she was unaccustomed to the idea of working for a living. As we left, I could barely contain a chuckle. Mark leaned in close, whispering, I never thought I'd see the day when Mom would be at a loss for words. But maybe this is what she needs to change. I nodded, feeling a cautious hope for the future. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter for her and for all of us. The family reckoning had been tough but necessary, a pivotal moment that promised to reshape the dynamics within Mark's family, hopefully for the better. The honeymoon was a welcome escape. As Mark and I walked along the sandy beaches, the soothing sound of the waves provided much-needed respite from the recent family turmoil. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Mark wrapped his arm around me and said, I'm sorry our wedding turned into such a drama, Anna. I wish things had turned out differently. I leaned into Mark, feeling the warmth of his embrace. It's okay, Mark. None of this was your fault. What matters is that we're together now, away from all the stress. Mark sighed, gazing out over the ocean. Yeah, but when we return, we'll have to deal with the reality of my mom's situation. It's going to be tough for her. I nodded, understanding his concern. Maybe this will be a chance for her to grow and see things from a new perspective. We spent our days exploring and our nights discussing our future. The challenges we have faced seemed to strengthen our bond, reaffirming our love for each other. On our last night, as we packed our bags, Mark looked thoughtful. You know, Anna, everything that's happened has made me realize how important you are to me. I can't imagine going through life with anyone else. I smiled, touched by his words. I feel the same way, Mark. We've been through a lot, but it's only made our relationship stronger. We can handle whatever comes our way as long as we're together. As we headed back home, I felt a sense of peace. The honeymoon had not only been a break from the chaos, but also a time for us to solidify our bond and prepare for the new chapter in our lives. We were returning to a changed reality, but we were doing it together, stronger and more united than ever. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it with Mark by my side. Returning from our honeymoon, Mark and I were unsure of what awaited us at his family home. The car ride was quiet, both of us lost in thoughts about the new family dynamics. Upon arrival, the first thing we noticed was the absence of Mark's mother. We were greeted instead by his grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor, who wore a knowing smile. Welcome back, you two. I suppose you're wondering about the changes here, she said, her tone light, but with an undercurrent of seriousness. Yes, where's Mom? Mark asked, scanning the surroundings. Mrs. Eleanor took a deep breath, her smile still in place. After you left, Maran caused quite a scene. She demanded that I restore her financial support. When I refused, she decided to leave. She's now living in a small apartment and, from what I hear, is looking for a job. Mark and I exchanged glances, absorbing the news. It was a stark departure from the luxurious life she was accustomed to. And there's more, Mrs. Eleanor continued, leaning in as if sharing a secret. Your father is considering a divorce. He's had enough of her antics. It seems she finally pushed him too far. Mark's expression mixed shock with a hint of relief. I can't believe it. I knew things would change, but this is more than I expected. I reached out and touched his arm. It's a lot to take in, but maybe this is for the best. A chance for everyone to start fresh on a more honest footing. Dinner that night was an oddly serene affair. The absence of Mark's mother was felt, but not in the way we had anticipated. The conversation was more open, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like there was a real sense of family. As we drove home later that evening, Mark was pensive. I always hoped for a change, but I didn't expect it to happen like this. It's going to be a big adjustment for Mom. I nodded. It's a tough situation, but maybe it's a necessary step for her to grow. And for your dad, too, to find some peace. The ride home was reflective. Both of us contemplated the new reality we were returning to. The family we had left before the honeymoon was not the same one we were coming back to. It was a sobering thought, but in many ways it was a hopeful one. Change, though painful at times, often paves the way for something better, and we were ready to face it together.